I always believed our little town in Washington state had one sanctuary left, Jefferson Ridge Elementary. A place where kids argued about lunch trades, painted volcanoes for science fairs, and ran toward recess like it was the Olympics. A place where my daughter, Christina Parker, could simply be herself, bright, artistic, unapologetically bold. So when she asked to dye a few streaks of her hair electric blue, I laughed and helped her do it in our bathroom. The dye stained our hands, splattered on the counter, but she looked radiant, glowing with that stubborn fifth-grader confidence I never wanted anyone to dim. That morning started perfect. Christina grabbed her hoodie, kissed my cheek, and ran toward the school bus, the blue strands catching sunlight like neon threads. By 11:30, everything was ruined. I got a text from another parent. "Have you heard what happened? Something with Christina. It's bad. No details. Just enough to send cold dread crawling up my spine." I called the school, voicemail. Texted Christina, no answer. Called again, nothing. I left work early and drove home faster than I should have. When Christina finally walked through our front door, I forgot how to breathe. Her long hair, the soft waves we'd grown since preschool, was butchered. Uneven. Jagged. As if someone took dull classroom scissors and hacked through it strand by strand. The blue streaks were gone. Her eyes were red and swollen from holding back tears all the way home. "Mom," she whispered. "Mrs. Thompson cut it." In front of everyone. Something inside me clicked into place. Not panic. Not confusion. But a cold, focused rage I hadn't felt in years. I knelt beside her, holding her trembling face in my hands. "Sweetheart, tell me everything. Every minute. Every detail." And she did. How Mrs. Thompson called her to the front of the class. How kids giggled. How the teacher lifted the scissors, said her hair was a distraction, and began cutting one uneven chop after another. By the time Christina finished, my palms were shaking. The next morning, I marched into Jefferson Ridge Elementary with Christina beside me and a folder full of photos tucked under my arm. I expected fear, regret, maybe even an apology. What I didn't expect was a wall. Principal Marilyn Carter stood in the lobby with her arms crossed and her lips pressed into a thin, artificial smile. Beside her, and this nearly made me laugh out of disbelief, was a man in a gray suit holding a leather briefcase. A district attorney. At an elementary school. I tightened my grip on Christina's hand. "Mrs. Parker," Principal Carter began, "before you say anything, please understand that we are handling the situation internally." Internally. My voice cracked from the sheer effort of not screaming. "Your teacher assaulted my daughter's hair in front of an entire class." "There is no internally." Christina shifted closer to me. The attorney stepped forward. "Ms. Parker, the school has policies regarding." I cut him off. "You're really going to quote policies at me while my daughter's hair looks like it was chewed by a lawnmower?" His face twitched, but he kept a corporate calm. Principal Carter cleared her throat sharply. "Mrs. Thompson acted out of concern for discipline. You know how quickly things can get out of hand. One student dyes her hair blue, then another green, then another pink. We must maintain order." There it was. The ridiculous fear. The slippery slope argument administrators loved so much. "So your solution," I said slowly, "was to physically cut a child's hair? With scissors? Without permission? In front of 25 other kids." The principal opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. "She used poor judgment," the attorney finally said. "But, poor judgment." I leaned forward, keeping my voice low so Christina wouldn't hear the tremor. "You humiliated my daughter. You violated her personal space. You traumatized her." Principal Carter's smile faltered. "Just for a second." "We've already taken action," she said quickly. "Mrs. Thompson has been terminated from her position. Effective immediately." I felt Christina's fingers tighten around mine. Fired. Good. She deserved it. But something in Carter's tone bothered me. It wasn't remorse. It was inconvenience. "Let me get this straight," I said. "You pressured your teacher to punish kids for hair color, she had a breakdown from the stress, and you fired her for following your orders?" The attorney stepped between us, palms raised. "Let's not make assumptions." "Oh, I already have," I snapped. I didn't even hear the office door open. I was too busy staring down Principal Carter, trying to decide whether her expression was arrogance, guilt, or a perfect corporate cocktail of both. But then Christina tugged at my sleeve. "Mom," she whispered. I turned, and there stood Mrs. Thompson. She looked nothing like the confident, sharp-voiced woman Christina had described. Her blouse was wrinkled. Her eyes were swollen. Her hair was pinned back hastily, as if she'd sprinted out of her house crying. She clutched a folder to her chest like a shield. When she spoke, her voice cracked. "Mrs. Parker, I'm so sorry." The room went silent. Even the district attorney glanced at the principal, surprised. I inhaled slowly, bracing myself. "Why?" I asked. "Why would you do that to my daughter?" Mrs. Thompson blinked rapidly, fighting tears. Her hands actually shook. "I didn't want to," she whispered. "I swear on everything I have, I didn't want to." Principal Carter stiffened immediately. "Donna," she snapped. "We discussed." "No." Mrs. Thompson stepped away from the wall, away from Carter's shadow, away from the guilt that had probably kept her awake all night. "Not this time. I'm not taking the blame alone." The attorney shot the principal a concerned look. "Marilyn, maybe we should stop." But Mrs. Thompson kept talking, words tumbling out in gasps. "3 days ago, a boy came in wearing jeans with a ripped knee. I explained it to the principal. His mother had called ahead. It wasn't intentional, but she wrote me up anyway." She inhaled shakily. "Said I was encouraging chaos." Chaos. Over a pair of jeans. She wiped her cheek. Then Christina came in with the blue streaks. I liked them. Honestly. They looked cute. She forced a sad smile at my daughter. But the principal said it was the beginning of an epidemic. Her words, not mine. I raised a brow. An epidemic of hair dye? She said if we didn't nip it in the bud, we'd have pink, green, purple hair all over campus. Mrs. Thompson's voice rose, trembling. She told me I needed to set an example. That if the board saw another incident, my salary would be reduced. Again. My stomach tightened. So it was pressure. Manipulation. Threats. Exactly what I suspected. And then yesterday. She swallowed hard. The principal called me into her office before class and said, "Handle it." Today, if she comes in with that hair again, I expect action. Principal Carter's voice snapped through the air like a whip. "Donna, that is not what I said." "That's exactly what you said." Mrs. Thompson's voice cracked, raw and desperate. "You cornered me. You made me feel like I'd lose my job if I didn't do something drastic. And when I did what you pushed me to, you fired me for it." The attorney rubbed his temples. He knew this was spiraling. Christina stood frozen, clinging to my arm. I exhaled slowly. "So let me get this straight. You ruined my daughter's hair because you were afraid of your boss." Mrs. Thompson nodded miserably. I panicked. I acted on emotion. I was wrong. I know. For a moment, the room stopped breathing. Even the clock on the wall felt like it paused between ticks. Mrs. Thompson stood in front of me, clutching that worn folder, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll pay you something, anything, but I don't have much left." She couldn't look me in the eyes. Her fingers twisted around the strap of her purse like she was holding onto the last piece of stability she had. Principal Carter, meanwhile, looked like she'd swallowed a lemon whole. The district attorney finally stepped forward. "Mrs. Parker, given Mrs. Thompson's termination and her cooperation." Cooperation? I cut in sharply. "You mean confessing that the principal ordered her to punish my daughter?" Carter's face flushed. "That is not." "Marilyn," the attorney hissed under his breath, "please." Mrs. Thompson blinked quickly, trying to steady herself. "I know what I did was wrong," she said. "I know I have to answer for it. But I want you to understand something." She swallowed. "I've been teaching for 22 years. My entire life is in education. And now, I'm blacklisted. No school will hire me after being fired mid-year. I'm giving private tutoring just to buy groceries." She looked older than she had 5 minutes ago. "I don't have savings," she continued softly. "No family to fall back on. I don't even know how I'll pay rent next month. But I want to make this right for Christina." Her voice broke again. I can give you 10,000. I blinked. 10,000. A fifth of what I had planned to ask for in court. The attorney folded his arms. It's a reasonable offer under the circumstances. Reasonable? I stared at him. My daughter came home looking like she fought with a weed whacker. He didn't flinch. He'd clearly heard worse. Mrs. Thompson wiped her cheek. It's all I have. And I mean that literally. I turned to Christina. She looked up at me, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw something softer in her eyes. Not anger. Not humiliation. Compassion. Mom, she whispered. She said she's sorry. And somehow, that hit harder than any legal argument ever could. Because the truth was, I wasn't here to destroy people. I was here to protect my daughter. And as much as I hated what Mrs. Thompson did, I could see she was already living in the wreckage of her own consequences. I let out a long, shaky breath. 10,000, I said. Fine. I'll accept it. Mrs. Thompson's shoulders collapsed in relief. She nodded, almost bowing, tears spilling freely now. Principal Carter looked stunned, as if she expected me to demand her resignation on the spot. But this wasn't about her. Not anymore. I turned to Christina, brushing a strand of her crooked bangs from her forehead. We're going to fix your hair, I said softly. We're going to make you feel like yourself again. She nodded. And for a second, I saw my brave little girl shine through all the pain. But just when I thought the worst was over, news started spreading through the school, fast, and soon everyone realized the blue hair incident wasn't the only storm brewing on campus. I honestly thought that accepting the settlement would calm everything down. Sign a few papers, go home, fix my daughter's hair, maybe breathe for the first time in 48 hours. But schools are small towns. And small towns have fast mouths. By the time Christina and I walked out of the office, whispers were already spreading through the hallways. Kids huddled by lockers. Teachers exchanged glances they tried to hide. Even the secretary at the front desk avoided eye contact. One of the older students passed by and murmured, "That's her. The blue-hair girl." Christina stiffened beside me. I put a hand on her back. "Ignore it, sweetheart." But inside, something tightened. Because humiliation doesn't disappear just because justice is technically served. As we reached the exit, Officer Daniels, the school resource officer, stepped into our path. A big guy with a kind face, usually the one who helped lost kids find their classrooms on the first day of school. "Mrs. Parker," he said quietly. "Mind if I walk you out?" That set off every alarm in my head. When a police officer wants to walk you somewhere, it's never good news, I muttered under my breath. Outside, the chilly Washington air hit us hard. Daniels kept his voice low. "You should know, something else happened yesterday." I frowned. "What does that mean?" He hesitated, glancing around to make sure no parents were within earshot. "There was a fight behind the storage garages after school." My stomach dropped. "What kind of fight?" I asked sharply. "Christina wasn't." No, he said quickly. "She wasn't involved. But some of her classmates were. 2 girls, 7th graders. Pretty rough one." Christina's eyes widened. "Was it because of me?" she whispered. Daniels nodded slowly. "That's what we're trying to figure out. Rumor is they were arguing about the hair incident. Something about who started teasing who. And, well, it escalated." I felt heat rising in my chest, a protective, furious heat. "So let me get this straight," I said, trying to steady my voice. "Not only did my daughter get humiliated by a teacher, you now have students fighting because your staff couldn't manage a situation with basic decency?" Daniels exhaled, clearly uncomfortable. "This place is on edge, Mrs. Parker. Kids are worked up. Parents are angry. Staff are stressed. You just needed to know what your daughter is walking back into." Christina clutched my hand. "Mom," she whispered. "I don't want to go back. Not tomorrow." And hearing that fear in her voice reignited the fire inside me. "This is exactly why we're not done," I said, lifting my chin. "People think the problem here was blue hair. The real problem is the adults who let a child be shamed in the first place." Daniels gave me a long, thoughtful look. "You're not wrong," he said softly. We reached my car. Christina climbed into the passenger seat quietly. Before I got in, Daniels leaned closer. Just a heads up. The school board is meeting tonight. They're not happy with how the principal handled things. You might want to be prepared. More is coming. More. Of course more was coming. Because in America, scandals in schools, by the time Christina and I made it home, I felt like my brain had been wrung out like a wet towel. I wanted a moment, just one, to let the day settle before the next fire started. But the universe had other plans. My phone blinked with a new voicemail notification. Unknown number. Local area code. I hit play. A crisp, authoritative voice came through the speaker. Mrs. Parker, this is Dana Whitford, Vice Chair of the Jefferson County School Board. I'd like to discuss the allegations you raised today. This situation appears more complicated than we were initially told. Please call me back at your earliest convenience. I froze in the middle of my living room. School board. Not the principal. Not the district attorney. This was the level above them, the people who could actually make decisions that mattered. Christina sat curled on the couch, scrolling through her phone, probably pretending not to watch me. I called back. The line picked up on the second ring. Mrs. Parker. Thank you for returning my call, Whitford said. Her tone wasn't cold, but it wasn't warm either. It was the voice of someone who had read too many reports and didn't trust any of them. I'll get right to the point, she continued. We were informed your daughter's teacher acted independently. But based on what you shared at the school today, that may not be accurate. That's putting it mildly, I said. Principal Carter gave her direct pressure to take action. And when she did, Carter fired her to cover herself. There was a brief pause. Mrs. Parker, would you be willing to come to the board meeting tonight and give a statement? I blinked. Tonight? As in tonight. Yes. This situation has escalated quickly. The haircutting incident has already been brought up by multiple parents, and several staff members have submitted concerns about Principal Carter's leadership. Your testimony could be pivotal. I glanced at Christina. Her short, uneven haircut. Her small fingers gripping the edge of the blanket. I'll be there, I said. Good. Be honest, be calm, and bring the photos. The board will want evidence. She hung up before I could respond. Typical government efficiency. I sat down next to Christina. Sweetheart, I said gently, I need to go to a meeting tonight. I'll be back before bedtime. She looked up at me with those tired, fragile eyes. Are they going to fix everything? I hesitated. I wanted to promise yes, that the school would magically transform overnight, that adults would suddenly remember kids were human beings. But I couldn't lie to her. So I squeezed her hand. I don't know, baby. But I'm going to make sure they listen. Christina nodded, leaning against me. For a moment, it was quiet. Just the two of us. The calm before the next round. When I finally stood to get ready, I caught a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror, the face of a mother who hadn't planned on becoming a public speaker or an activist, but had no choice. Because once someone humiliates your kid, you learn fast exactly how loud your voice can get. And as I walked into that school board meeting later that evening, I didn't expect to see the one person standing at the podium before me. Mrs. Thompson, giving her own testimony. The parking lot outside the Jefferson County School Board building was already full when I arrived. Parents. Teachers. People holding notebooks and coffee cups like shields. News travels fast in small-town America, especially when it involves a scandal with a child. I slipped inside and found the boardroom packed. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Rows of cold metal chairs lined the room. A long table up front held 7 board members, each with a stack of papers and identical annoyed expressions. And standing at the podium, trembling but determined, was Mrs. Thompson. I slipped quietly into a seat near the back, but she caught sight of me and gave the tiniest nod. A silent acknowledgement. A thank you. A plea. Her voice wavered, but she pushed through. For over 20 years, she said, I devoted my life to teaching. I've mentored students, stayed after hours, bought supplies with my own money. But this year, she inhaled shakily. This year has been different. The board members leaned in. Our principal, Marilyn Carter, has created a climate of fear. Demands with no logic. Punishments that didn't match any handbook. Unrealistic expectations about discipline. and constant pressure. Murmurs rippled through the audience. She reprimanded me for a student wearing jeans with a ripped knee. She said it was a breakdown of order. And she warned me if I didn't start showing she could rely on me, my salary and job would be on the line. My jaw clenched. I could practically feel Christina's uneven bangs beneath my fingers again. Mrs. Thompson swallowed hard. And then came the issue with Christina Parker. Her voice cracked. I liked her hair. I told her that. But the principal said I needed to nip it in the bud. That if I didn't make an example, chaos would spread. She said I needed to take action. One of the board members raised a brow. Did she explicitly instruct you to cut the student's hair? Mrs. Thompson's eyes filled again. No, she didn't say the words. But she made it clear that I would suffer consequences if I didn't stop the epidemic of dyed hair. And I made a terrible choice. A terrible, emotional, desperate choice. And when I did exactly what she pressured me to do, she fired me to save herself. The room erupted in whispers. The board chair tapped her microphone. Order, please. Mrs. Thompson gripped the podium harder, as if the wood itself was keeping her standing. I'm not defending what I did. It was wrong. I hurt a child. And I will carry that guilt forever. But I will not let the principal rewrite this story to save her own career. Then she stepped back, eyes red, chest rising and falling with sharp breaths. The board chair looked around the room. Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. All eyes turned toward me. Next on our list is Mrs. Parker. My stomach tightened. This was it. I walked slowly toward the podium, every step echoing louder than it should have. Mothers aren't trained for this. We don't go into parenthood expecting to speak at hearings or fight administrative battles. But here I was. I placed my folder of photos on the podium, lifted my chin, and began. My daughter came home with her hair. The door slammed so hard the sound cracked through the room. Every head turned. Principal Marilyn Carter stood in the doorway like she owned the place, chin high, lips pressed into that same condescending half-smile she'd used on me in her office. The smile that said, I'm in charge. I always win. Not tonight. She strode to the center of the room, heels clicking sharply, and stopped just a few feet from the podium where I still stood holding Christina's photos. Her voice cut through the air, cold and technical. I'd like to respond to these accusations. The board chair sighed, pinched the bridge of her nose, and nodded. Proceed, Miss Carter. Carter folded her arms. First, let me be perfectly clear, I never instructed Mrs. Thompson to cut a child's hair. Ever. Teachers in this district are expected to use professional judgment, and when they don't, consequences follow. She said it like she was reading a legal disclaimer. I glanced back at Mrs. Thompson. Her face twisted, hurt, frustration, disbelief all crashing together. And, second, Carter continued, this sudden narrative that I've created a hostile environment is nothing more than an emotional reaction to a situation blown out of proportion. I felt heat rising in my chest. Blown out of proportion? Tell that to my daughter, hiding behind her hoodie at home. A board member leaned forward. Ms. Carter, can you explain the write-ups? Multiple staff members mentioned excessive disciplinary pressure. That's called leadership, Carter snapped. Some teachers are too lenient. I run a tight ship. Whispers rolled across the room. Another board member frowned. Did you or did you not refer to dyed hair as an epidemic? Carter lifted her chin. I was speaking metaphorically. Mrs. Thompson let out a small, broken laugh. I don't think she meant to, it just escaped. The room froze. Carter's eyes narrowed into slits. Donna, if you have something to say. I already said it, Mrs. Thompson whispered. You're just scared people finally heard me. The tension snapped like a wire. Board members exchanged looks. Parents murmured. Even the attorney from earlier shifted uncomfortably. Then the board chair cleared her throat. Ms. Carter, step back, please. Carter's jaw locked, but she obeyed. The chair looked out at the audience, at the stack of written complaints, at the photos I'd laid out of my daughter's ruined hair. I think we've heard enough, she said. The room went dead silent. After reviewing the testimonies and the evidence, the board has concluded that Ms. Carter exhibited a pattern of excessive disciplinary demands, poor leadership judgment, and retaliatory behavior towards staff. Carter blinked. Once. Twice. As if she didn't understand English. Effective immediately, the chair continued. Ms. Carter is placed on administrative leave pending termination proceedings. A ripple of shock spread across the room. I stared at the board chair. Then at